happiness is something over which I had some control, that I could enhance and increase. There are things I could do to build a happier life. And I think that's important. Some people just assume, well, I'm just born this way, or because I had trauma in my youth, that I can't be happy. Well, but it's still possible.
It's awareness of myself, awareness of others, awareness what helps me, awareness what doesn't. I bring it back to things like, can you be angry with someone while you're hugging them? Can you be sad when you're dancing? No, you can't.
But setting and working towards meaningful goals, and they're sort of both short-term, medium and longer term, on a daily, weekly, monthly, annual basis. Well, it gives us sort of purpose and direction. And what it also ultimately gives us is a sense of accomplishment and satisfaction, which is a form of happiness.
It's very hard to feel sad or to feel lonely when you've got connection. So happiness does buy that freedom. It does buy that comfortability, I suppose. Not necessarily buys you your happiness, but being comfortable, being able to do certain things and not having to stress improves your happiness.
Well, that last point you made is the important one. What we do know for a fact is that financial stress contributes to unhappiness. So financial strain, not being able to pay the bills, not being able to afford medical care, struggling to pay the rent or put food on the table, will almost certainly lead to unhappiness, stress, anxiety, etc. So in that sense, lack of money is problematic for happiness. But what people then assume is that more and more money will make you more and more happy, which it doesn't necessarily. However, there are ways. So once we have enough, and there's a whole lot of debate about how much is enough, but once we have enough, there are ways to get a better return on your investment for happiness. So there are certain ways you can spend your money that will bring you more happiness. And for example, that is spending your money on experiences more than material possessions. So something like a holiday or even a conference is more likely to have a greater return, happiness return, than buying is something that will depreciate over time, the material possessions. So that's one way. Giving money away is a way to bring happiness. So giving to charity or good causes or whatever it might be. Buying presents for other people. And that, that's a part of happiness that's often underappreciated, is that, in giving we receive. So it's not just, happiness is not just about me. Yes, I do need to take care of myself and so self-care and, I'm the only person that can be responsible for certain parts of my life, including my happiness, etc. But if it's just me, that's selfishness, not happiness. So one of the best things we can do for happiness is to do good for other people, to care for other people, to give to other people. And that's a way, and it doesn't always have to be financial. Obviously, there are ways of giving, we're giving time. But that's, there are ways to spend our money that will provide a greater return on investment than other ways.
We've both obviously touched on tools and strategies around, improving happiness, improving our mood. And I know there's a science around it, but for those listening right now that, kind of want to go, how do I shift my life? What are some of the things on a daily and a weekly basis that they need to kind of input into their life to, assist their happiness?
Yeah, definitely. And that's one of the great things we've learned from the science of positive psychology over the last 20 years, and even obviously psychology way before that, obviously, is that there are, I suppose the first important message is we can boost our happiness. Even if part of it might be sort of genetic, or even if part of it was from early learning experiences, regardless of your biological or family background, there are all things that we can do to create a happier, better life. And often they're simple things. I mean, I sometimes, sometimes encourage people to think that the reason they don't do these things is because they kind of seem boring, but that doesn't mean they're unimportant. So when I say these things in a minute, people will probably heard of these things before, but the boring basics still need to be done in a consistent way in order to enjoy the benefits. So, for example, we're talking about setting and working towards meaningful goals. Simple thing, you probably all, not necessarily a radically new concept, but setting and working towards meaningful goals on a daily, week, and it's sort of both short-term, medium, and longer term, on a daily, weekly, monthly, annual basis. What that does is contribute, it gives us sort of purpose and direction. And what it also ultimately gives us is a sense of accomplishment and satisfaction, which is a form of happiness. So that's one simple thing. We all need to have goals, or ideally we want to have goals that we can work towards on a regular basis. Healthy living, and you touched a bit on this earlier. You said sleep, for example. So the basics of health. It's hard to be happy if you're sick and tired all the time. So basic things like regular exercise. Exercise is a potent antidepressant and stress buster. So regular exercise, healthy eating, and good sleep. Again, really obvious things, but things that many of us could do better, I suppose. So that's another point. Fostering hope and gratitude and optimism. It all comes under the idea of what we might call mindset or attitude, I suppose. Now, again, some people are born naturals at this. For some people, that comes really easily, but for other people, it might not be as easy, but it's still something you can work towards. You can still build your optimism muscle, so to speak, the way you build your physical muscles in the gym. So, practicing gratitude on a regular basis, thinking of what's going well in your life, having things to look forward to, all of that's really, really important. And then, as I kind of hinted at earlier, remembering that it's, in addition to all of that, it's not just about me. My happiness. So fostering positive relationships, connection, a sense of belonging is arguably the most important thing, really. So that's loving and being loved at all levels, I suppose. So that's our intimate relationships. So for me, I have a wife and children, but it's also friends and acquaintances and colleagues. They're all actually important in different ways. Even the less intimate ones. So all of that, and then maybe, there's lots of other ones, I suppose, but one thing that we sometimes forget is just having fun. I think I can be guilty at times. I know I'm guilty at times of taking things too seriously and of taking myself too seriously. Look, life is serious at times. We all have responsibilities and obligations. So I'm not suggesting we don't attend to those. But life should also be fun and playful, and we should, it's important we don't forget to laugh and dance at times. So, so they're things that we can integrate into our lives on a regular daily basis. And if we do that, consistently, we will certainly significantly increase our chances of enjoying happiness.
Yeah, I love that, because it gives so many tools and strategies for people that are sitting there right now, and it's really awareness, right? I think, through my whole journey, it's awareness of myself, awareness of others, awareness what helps me, awareness what doesn't. And I bring it back to things like, can you be angry with someone while you're hugging them? No, you can't. Can you be sad when you're dancing, right? Like, it's because there's certain things that our body, physiologically, and the chemicals and how we kind of movement, if you're in nature, those kind of things. There's a lot of things that it's very hard to do, to feel sad or to feel lonely when you've got connection, when you've got some of these things in as well. I think that's the awareness piece for people listening is, if you're feeling a certain thing, what's the opposite thing that you need to do? What's something that you need to do to shift that focus and shift that mindset?
Yeah, 100%. Well, so two things. Firstly, I would say it is important to emphasize that it's okay not to be okay. So it's
Yes.
okay to be sad. It's okay to be angry. These are normal human emotions that we all experience to some degree, to some extent. So it's it is important to say that we don't want. Well, I don't want to send the message to anyone that they should never be angry or there's something wrong with them if they're angry or sad. However, as you said, even if we accept that these are normal human emotions, and even when we accept that it's okay not to be okay, there are still things we can do about it. So that and I think you said this earlier, so we bounce back more quickly. So that anger, for example, it doesn't last for days, but only minutes, or that the sadness, doesn't last for hours, but whatever the time frame might be. And so, yes, again, there are some, relatively simple things. And I think this is a mistake we sometimes make, is we underappreciate the little things that we can do. And there are often some, it's not always easy and it's not always simple, but there are often some simple little things we can do, as I said, like hugging someone, like putting on some music and dancing, like watching a silly YouTube video or whatever, just to as a bit of a boost that can kind of break the pattern that get us out of the rut that we sometimes fall into.
Yeah, exactly. So looking back at happiness in your life, Tim, what surprised you the most?
It was a good question, actually. Well, I think if I go right back to the very, very early days when I was a um, ignorant youth, which we all were at some point, I suppose. I think probably the biggest, or one of the biggest learnings was the fact that I had some control over this. Again, I think in the very, like most people when I was young, I just didn't know that there were things I could do. So one of the biggest learnings is that happiness um, is something over which I had some control. That happiness was something that I could enhance and increase, even if again, even if it's not all the time, every minute, every day. That there are things I could do to build a happier life, and I think that's important. Some people, just assume, well, I'm just born this way, or because I had trauma in my youth, that I can't be happy. Well, it might be harder for some of us than others, but it's still possible. So that's one thing, and then I guess probably, I mean, there's many, many things. I've probably spent too much time thinking about happiness. So I could talk for hours and hours and days. But I suppose if for sort of the surprising things, it's probably things like the less obvious ones. For example, that exercise. We often think about the physical
Mm.
benefits of exercise, and don't get me wrong, there clearly are many physical benefits. We're stronger, more flexible, better aerobic capacity, etc. But I think I was surprised, like a lot of people, with the psychological benefits that come from exercise, the psychological benefits that come from getting, prioritizing sleep, and even maybe the benefits that come from connecting with others. I guess it's maybe I think I was probably guilty, like a lot of people, of maybe being too selfish at times, thinking, oh, I've got to do all this for me, I've got to take care of myself, and I need to dig myself out of this hole, and I do need to do those things. But I suppose as I've matured a bit and maybe hopefully got a bit wiser, I've realised that it's not just about me, but my happiness will come from taking care of my children. My happiness will come from looking after and doing what I can for my wife. My happiness will come from staying connected with friends, which as a lot of us know, it gets a bit harder as you get older and busier, etc. So making that effort to, and making that effort to schedule lunches with friends rather than just sort of letting months or years go by. So yeah, they're not necessarily surprising things for some people, but maybe slightly less obvious in some ways.
Yeah. Over the next 10 years, Tim, what do you hope that the Happiness Institute and your work achieves?
I suppose I'm at a stage. I'm at a stage now of. Sorry, I'll go back. There's a social psychologist called Erik Erikson. It's a bit of a funny name, but who who's very famous for his sort of stages of life model, which we don't have time to go into detail now. But anyway, he argued that we all kind of, and there's some good research to it. We go through different stages of life. Part of which is that when we are younger, we are a bit more selfish in a way, and we're a bit more hedonistic in some ways. But as we mature and go through stages, we ultimately, well, if we're maturing well, end up at a stage of what's called generativity. And I suppose this is where I am now. So generativity essentially is about giving back. So this is the focus of my life now, is really giving back through philanthropy, but and largely through mentoring. So I guess I've shifted a lot of my focus now, a lot of my professional time now is mentoring mostly young leaders in the what I call the for good space. So people who are in some way or others trying to make the world better. So for a while, it's largely been in the mental health space. So mentoring young leaders who are trying to make the world better in the mental health space, but it's also a bit broader now. So I'm very passionate about the environment. So people that are looking to do good for climate, etc., etc. So that's increasingly become my focus over the last few years, and I think will continue to for the next for as long as I live. Hopefully, there's a few more years left. But